Hello, and welcome to a podcast about creating experimental art in trauma-informed and sustainable ways that support artists, our communities, and the organization as a whole. I'm your host, Molly, and you're listening to Any Other Anythings. In this season, we are focused on the latest project being produced by Graybox Collective. It is titled Positive Ruminations. So this is an event that will feature 4 new works, and each episode of this season of Any Other Anythings will feature conversations from the creative teams developing the new work. And we are really focusing on capturing the process and sharing out the things we find interesting along the way. Hope that you enjoy the season of Any Other Anythings. All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Any Other Anythings. I am your host, Molly. And in this episode, it's just me talking briefly about the editing section or editing portion of our creative process. So we are intentional about, as best we can, like we're human, right? But we are intentional about separating out when we're devising, when we're creating, and when we're in that generative space versus when we're in that editing space. And so in this last kind of section of what you'll hear from the creatives, you'll be hearing them really talk about the editing process, right? So these are recordings that have happened after the final rehearsal before the show, before the premiere in November. And so in the editing process, we do our best to not generate any new material. Like that time has come and gone. That being said, if as we're editing, it's like, ooh, actually we need like a little transition here or there, we might add that in. But the majority of the time is spent saying like, okay, this piece no longer serves the work that we're trying to move forward into the world, or as we are playing with pacing or timing or thinking about some of the feedback that we've gotten with the work in progress showings, all those little bits and pieces come into play as we start to really hone in on what this piece is and what we will ultimately show. And I think I might have said this was the last phase. It's the last like big chunk of trauma-informed creative practices. I mean, the very, very last thing you do in trauma-informed creative practices is some kind of like performance or some kind of closure with the piece, but it's like this tiny little moment, right? And yeah, so the editing is going to be the main focus. I think I'll leave it there. Okay. Enjoy these next few episodes that are the creatives talking about those final rehearsals. So much for taking the time and energy to check out another episode of Any Other Anythings. Greatly appreciate your presence. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to find out more about this podcast, the speakers, and Graybox Collective. You can also go to grayboxcollective.com/podcast for a full transcript of this episode. Thank you again for listening. Thank you again for being here. Greatly appreciate it. Take care of yourselves and each other.